Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOML, a Year of Magical Learning. Today we're on book 109, and as always, if you like anything that we say, please subscribe. If you want to get notified when we have new episode posted, hit those bell. Other than that, let's get on with it. So, Chris.
Yeah, let's do this. This is an interesting one. This is a I don't know, probably one of the if I have like my top five favorite books of this journey, that we've talked about along the way.
Mm-hmm.
This one's probably one of the top five most unique books on this journey thus far. And I'll explain why here in a second. It's a book called Gender Trouble by the author. Gender Trouble, and the subtitle of it is Feminism and the Subversion of Identity by Judith Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea what this book is or who Judith Butler is?
No idea, no clue.
Okay. Well, neither did I, to be fair. I mean, uh,
Uh,
do you have any? Okay, so this book's about uh, Judith Butler is I guess she's like a philosopher, I think. I mean, I don't know if that's what you would call her identity. I don't know if that's what she would identify as, but I'm pretty sure like that's kind of what her role is. So
okay.
she is basically this book is about questioning the category of a woman or masculinity, femininity, how they've been societal constructs, and um, um,
So it sounds like
so
feminism and the subversion of identities. It's saying that feminism is essentially being downplayed by society, right?
no, it's about it. I think the message of the book in general is that gender is a societal construct, and
Is
we
it?
do. Well, that's what the
I
book's
mean,
about.
I can
Is
understand money is
it,
a construct. I don't know about gender though.
well, that's the point of the book is is
Uh,
is to say that gender is a societal construct, and that we kind of are performative toward whatever our gender is that we want to that society values and whatnot. Look, we don't need to get into the book. Like, I mean, like, it's not like
okay.
that. Like, I mean, you can talk about the book afterwards if you want to, but like,
Okay,
here's
okay, fair
here's the
enough.
truth. So the reason the magical learning is all about living the values, right? Like, so challenging
Hmm.
yourself, being going through this process, learning something new every day, right? The title of the reflection title of this one is I've never felt dumber in my life, and it was awesome. uh, and here's why. So I started this reflection off with saying, like, I've now read, at this point in time, when I wrote this reflection, I was around like 200 books into this journey. I'm now up
Hmm.
to like 250 or something like that, or whatever it is at this point in time. So over the past roughly 2.5 years of my life, I've read a lot. I'm not saying I know anything, but I've read a lot, and like, in some of the books that I've read and that you and I have done together, and that you and I talk about a lot. They're not like light reading. You know what I mean? They're like things like Thinking Fast and Slow, and I put like Enlightenment Now and The Selfish
Hmm.
Gene. Like, some of these are pretty in-depth topics, and a lot of math and physics, and a lot of science, like, whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's been, I feel like I've covered a gambit of a lot of different topics throughout this whole entire journey. And I'm really not ever afraid to tackle any book, which is why I tackled this book in general. But that said, I felt like if I could get through those books and at least have some semblance of understanding of what they're talking about, and and the basics, understand basic concepts around it, that
Hmm.
that I'm that I feel like I'm a pretty smart person. Like, I don't know what that means necessarily, but I feel like I can at least understand concepts and things like that in general. And then I met Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. And the reason why this book even came into my life, because this journey is amazing. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, his name's Brian. He we were having like a dinner party one night, and like a go-to question that I love to ask these days, just the compound effect of this whole journey is like, when we get into like deep conversations, I'm always like, hey, what is like, if you had to pick like one of your favorite books you've ever read that you learned the most from in your life, like what would that be? And Brian immediately was like, Gender Trouble. He was like, that book, he was like, I've highlighted so many things in that book. He's like, I've tabbed so many things in there. He's like, I feel like that book was like a huge catalyst for me to become the person that I became today. And you know, he was like, I still think about it often. And I was like, well, Brian, Brian's a college professor, and he's a smart guy. He's somebody that he's somebody that I value his opinion and his friendship. And I was like, hey, look, if this is what this journey is all about, right? You know, like it's about meaningful relationships, meaningful work, challenging yourself, all that other good stuff, right? So I was like, screw it. If Brian, this topic wasn't necessarily that interesting to me, but I was like, you know, if Brian found this to be very of value, then I'll go do it myself, right? We'll see what happens. So I started it, and what I found was I've never felt dumber in my life. I shit you not. Like I loved every minute of it, but I never felt dumber in my life. I can't even tell you. I Googled more words in this book as I was going through it than I've ever, like maybe 10x more than I've ever Googled anything in my entire life of any book that I've ever read, where I'm like learning things like ontological and phallogocentrism and epistemological. And like, I mean, these are just a small number of the words that she was using in this book. And I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, I can't even understand the word, you know, like this is about like, you know, we talk all the time about the importance of words and communication and like, and like, and all these other things. Right. And I literally could not understand the words that I was consuming. I was so lost the whole entire time. And every single day I would like run down from my office, you know, because my wife and I would work from home and I'd be reading this in the morning or something like that. And I'm like, I would run down into the kitchen because her office is right next to the kitchen. And I'm like, I don't understand anything. I'm like, what is going on in this book? I'm so lost, you know, and I was like, but I'm going to keep pushing through it because endure is one of our core values, right? You know, I'm going to endure, like I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm going to try to push through it. You know, Brian recommended it, so I'm going to keep doing it. So I fought. And I think at the end of the day, what I found that I loved so much about this book was it was humbling as hell. Like, you know, like I know you and I talk all the time about like we don't know anything, right? And I really do believe that. I mean, I know that you believe that in your heart, and I believe that in my heart for sure. But sometimes, you know, you read a lot of books and sometimes you feel like you might have some idea of what's going on out there in the world. But like, you know, it was a book like this, like literally humbled me to my core. And what's rare a lot of times with books, humility is one of my core values as well. And I rarely ever get to, you know, express humility in a book usually a lot of times, because like I said, I pick up concepts pretty easily. But like I was humbled to my core reading this book, you know, and it was great. I loved it. Like I felt like it was still a great expression of my values and living for two and the mission and the purpose that we're all on with this whole entire journey. So you know, I don't necessarily get the topic. I maybe don't necessarily think that I absorbed it all very well, but I learned that there's so much more left to learn out there in this world, and I appreciate Brian for recommending it. And yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I remember what I was saying is basically, you know, we don't know anything, and we don't know shit. You don't know shit. I don't know shit. Right? Basically, that's the mantra of who we are. And anyone who said they know something, it's, you know, basically they don't know.
Run away.
Right.
Right.
And so that is just the beauty of life, right? No one knows. There's nothing absolute. Sometimes, you know, when we say, okay, I have proven something that this happens and that happens. In the way that my philosophy is that you cannot prove anything. No one can prove anything. You can only disprove it. You cannot prove anything. And
Sure.
so information is always there, and they're so vast that we can't even count the stars in the universe. We cannot count the information that we know. So no one can go out there and claim that they know this or know that, know anything. I mean, sometimes, like we said before, even if you do, there's a saying that, you know, no man can step in the river twice. It's because things are always in flux, right? The information you knew yesterday or knew 2 seconds ago has become different. It's changed. So to be a learner, to embrace one of the core values of the company, you have to put yourself in the learner seat and be humble in what it is that you don't know. And I think that only makes you I guess enjoy the discoveries of new things rather than, oh, I've seen it before, oh, boring, yeah, I've seen it, I mean, there's nothing new for me, right? If you go through life with that kind of an approach, then everything is nothing fun, nothing exciting, nothing newness, nothing to pay attention to. And going through life like that is pretty boring. I mean,
for sure.
and we talked about the other day, it's about, our humanity is about discovery. And we cannot sit idle and do nothing. We have to do something. We have to find something new in order for us to be, I guess, like, our brains are activated when there's something new. But if you've seen something once and seen it again, just like watching a movie, like you watch a movie, you have a new plot, right? New story, new twist. Why is it a twist? Why are there a lot of twists?
You didn't know about it.
Because the thing, it activates that brain. Oh, I didn't know. So it same thing with what you call, like, humor, right? The humor always has a punchline, always has a twist, because you're not expecting that. So our brains are so I guess adapted to figuring out things, right? But whenever you knock it off its feet, it is when your brain is really saying, I'm really I kind of excited, and it activates that part of the brain, and you want to pay attention more to it just because your brain was full. A lot of, like, just we are basically in awe by magic, for example, right? It's because there's so much twist in it. We say, oh, I didn't know that. I know they could do that, right? So it's the inexplicable things that we are trying to figure out. That is what interests us. So imagine that everything. Life becomes so boring.
Incredibly boring.
It's one of those things where the more you know, right? The more that you suffer, just because knowledge is a curse, right? In this curse is different than the curse of knowledge, quote unquote, right? But essentially, having the ability to still get kicked out of a twist from a movie or from a joke, that is the colors and the spice of life.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I mean, like, I couldn't say it any better. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head for sure. I mean, I think that's why I really enjoyed this book. I will always remember this book. Only for the reasons of how frustrating it was for me to read it. Like, and to be clear, like, I want to be, like, crystal clear. I don't necessarily struggle with the topic of that she was covering. I didn't understand the way that she was describing it. Like, I could not follow her. Like, I mean, she was talking in such academia talk that, like, I mean, I was like, man, if you would just figure out a way to talk about, like, simplicity, like I think we like in the Anti-Fragile book, where you keep it simple, right? It's like,
right.
It's like, it's the art of understanding something is pretty simple for the most part, but, like, the art of writing it out and telling it, and, like, all the time and effort that goes into refining that idea down to something that you can distill it to that somebody else can understand, like, that's mastery, right? Like, and
right.
I'm not,
I mean, understanding is one thing, but to distill it into a in an orchestrated manner so that other people can understand what you say, it's hard. Because a lot of time the thing is, we understand something, we've seen something, and you ask me, hey, can you describe to me what you've seen? Can you describe to me what you felt, right? Can you kind of take me through all this stuff? A lot of time, basically, you say, well, I'm lost for words, right? I just don't know the words to tell you, right? Because even though I knew it, I see it, I saw it, I I felt it, right? I know what I'm talking about, and I know how to identify. I just can't tell you about it. It's just
Right.
because, a lot of times you just don't have the words, right? And for someone to take all
She
of these like intangibles and distill it and orchestrate it in a way that you can express it using words, that's mastery.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And to be clear, I'm not saying that Judith Butler isn't a master over this domain. I just didn't understand the words. Like, so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm that's why I said it was humbling. I mean, I was like, I don't understand. I literally, it felt like I felt like I was reading something in German almost. I was like, I cannot, like, my brain cannot listen and follow along or read or whatever it was. Like, to what the words you are saying and comprehend what is the meaning behind this. Like,
Right.
it literally felt like somebody was speaking German to me, and I knew they weren't speaking German to me. But at the same time, it felt like that. So it was so humbling to know, like, I don't there I my vocabulary must be like incredibly limited, apparently, to be able to engage in a topic like this. And I want to engage in a topic like this because this is important to friends of mine, and this is important to a lot of people out there. The conversation around gender is an important conversation to have. I mean, some people don't, clearly there's a lot of people that have gender identity complications, in this world. I'm not saying I don't have I'm not going to make a stance on it or have a take on it, but like it's there. I mean, you can't deny that somebody has feelings about it, and they're exploring these topics, and that's fine. Explore away. That's what this whole journey is about, right? But like, I would love to understand more, and unfortunately, I can't understand if we can't talk a common language, and I can't speak a common language with somebody if I don't understand the literal words you are saying to describe how you feel. So like, that was the big disconnect for me. It was like, man, I either need to step up my game to better understand the words that this lady is talking about, so I can better relate to the topic and understand, or we need to figure out a way to simplify this concept and to talk in common language, around what is it, what is this idea, and what is this message in general, so we can move forward with it on common grounds, so I can listen and learn, right? Like, like, that was probably my biggest struggle with this book is I mean, it felt like there was a community. This must be what it feels like if you're talking another language to somebody.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, when you trying to learn a new language, or when you go to another country, that's essentially how you felt. It's like you can't find the words. Because if you know only 10 words in English, right? And somebody came to America for the first time, right? And they only know 10 words. Well, they are very creative in terms of the words and the combination of words of the 10 words they knew to get expressed to you. And
Right.
that's, to me, that's hard, right?
Well,
And
I mean, when you came over here, did you speak any English?
no.
So how did you feel when you were trying to communicate with your classmates or with your, teachers or whatever? Like, I mean, like, did it feel like there was missing pieces of the puzzle all the time, and you were like, I don't. I mean, how did that feel?
You can communicate, not at all, right? They speak and you stare at them. That's what I did. I just stare at them
So what
because
did you do? How'd you learn? I mean, what did you do? Like, I mean, how did you?
I guess when I came here, I was still young. I was 10 years old. So a lot of what I did was just osmosis for the most part. You sit there and listen to people, and then you basically put kind of one and one together to get two. If they say, table, and they sit on a table, or they tell them to sit down and they sit down, right? You just learn like a baby would learn. You just
Right.
associate the gesture with the words, and eventually you say, oh, you want me to sit down? Oh, you want me to be quiet? Uh, so basically that's how I learned. It's basically just sit there and just observe, right? And that's there wasn't any formal way to learn it. It just you learn it by using your human brain, which is, you watch and you associate. And I
Right.
think that's how baby learns too. They watch you do it, and then you associate the words with the you know, the actions. And the thing is, one of the things I found that a lot of times, like my voice in American, it's more manly than in Vietnamese.
You mean the actual like your
Mm-hmm.
the
I
the
have
words?
a deeper voice when I speak English. I have a
Interesting.
very light voice when I speak Vietnamese. The
Do it.
thing is,
Do
my
the
philosophy is that because you listens to people talk, right?
Mhm.
And then you mimic their way of saying. So whatever whoever you learn after, you going to carry on even the accent.
Interesting.
Right? And so a lot of times, like there, see, in Vietnam, there's three regions, right? The north, south, north, middle, and south. And each region has a very, very distinct dialect, right? I am, if they say anything, like among all the three regions, we can tell where you came from.
Huh.
But if you take those guys and have them speak English, there's no way we tell.
Interesting.
The sounding and the word is different. So I'm saying that, you know, the way that you talk, and even the intonation of your voice, and even the you know, like sometimes you have a higher pitch and a lower pitch, like
Mhm.
you know, it because you listen to people who you learn from people who had a low pitch or high pitch,
Good.
because
Yeah. I
you
mean,
actually mimic the, I mean, there is not exactly like, it's not exactly like, you know, if I learn from James Earl Jones, then I'll have a exact like James Earl Jones, but I
right.
have
Right.
90% of what he sounds like,
Mhm.
right? Because you
Yeah.
know, because my physiology may be slightly different, but I can mimic the way he say, and or the you know, the pitch, right? The pitch and the yaw and all that that goes with it. And that's an
So
interesting that I've noticed.
so is it possible to learn somebody else's philosophy without living life with them and observing the way that they like is it possible to learn
What do you
Nietzsche's
mean by
philosophy?
philosophy?
Because this is a philosophy. Like Judith Butler is a philosopher. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
If you Google her name, I'm pretty sure like that's what her role is. I think she's a professor um, in queer theory and literary theater. She's an American philosopher and gender theorist. Like she's a philosopher. She's an educator. She works in um, you know, academia. She's what school did she work at? She was at Yale, Bennington College. Like,
Mm-hmm. So
um,
what's the question again?
so the question is like this book that I read from her, maybe going back to what we were just talking about, or what you were just describing of like learning, through basically osmosis almost, right? Like what I
Yes.
struggle with, I need to almost be immersed in her life to ever understand the words she's trying to say, because she lives in a different world than I live in. I mean, like
Right.
without a doubt. I'm finishing up. I'm on back-to-back dystopian novels right now of 1984 and A Brave New World,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting ready to finish A Brave New World right now. And these people, like the savage comes in with all of his emotions and understanding of mom and dad and God, and like, and all these things, and people and the people in the new utopia land and the Brave New World are like, they don't, that's not how they do. They've society has systematically tried to eliminate emotions in general, and for stability, right? So when they would say words like love and God and mother and father, like they don't even exist. They literally, these people are like, this is
Mm-hmm.
disgusting. Like, I don't understand what you were saying to me. Like, this doesn't, I've never heard of the word God before. I've
Right.
heard of they say Ford, as in like Henry Ford. That's who their God is. So when they say like, oh my God, it's like, oh my
Oh, my
Ford.
fourth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's I don't, have you read that book?
No, no.
It's really funny actually, when every time they keep saying, oh, for Ford's sake, like, and you're like it cracks me up every time I hear it. But I guess where I was going with this is like the disconnect of the language, like, you know, of what these words mean, and the life that they grew up in. Like they literally have no idea that this other world even exists and this other world even exists. You know, they're both like coming together going, I don't know what you're saying, and the only way for me to understand these concepts would be to probably to live their life with them, like you said, and like, you know, be around them. And like I'm not in the queer community, I'm not in the LGBTQ, you know, community, I don't have gender identity issues, you know, so like I don't understand these words. This is why I wanted to read this book, you know. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is I don't know. Like, you know, that's what I know after this is I don't know. Like, you know.
Okay. So to answer your question, and I think, you know, in my opinion, this is what I've seen and what I've observed, right? I'm not claiming to know or this is the answer to it, but for me, I think that anyone who learns anything has to learn it by osmosis first and foremost, by osmosis, right?
From somebody else.
From someone else, because the thing is, when you are when you are learning from somebody by osmosis, you basically take whatever they say as true. You don't question it. Right. There's no you don't question anything. So a lot of times, so the criteria for you to learn by osmosis is that you don't have an existing framework of philosophy. Okay. I learned English very fast, right? Basically in 6 months I learned how to speak English. Right. You know why that is? It isn't because I was smart or anything. It's because I have a blank slate. Blank slate means that in Vietnam, I didn't learn a single thing. I was basically like a baby, 10 years old, but I don't know anything. I told you this before, like I don't know anything, and I do things that is against the like society expectations, and you know, I just what I do. I just don't agree with, right? It's not that I, you know, like I said, I don't think about, like we're talking about before, you know, there's certain things that people do because it's maybe it's gonna bring shame to my family. I will, you know, I will try to behave kid, because, you know, I don't want my mom or my dad to be ashamed of me, or to be mad, or to get in, you know, inconvenience, whatever. I don't think about any of those things. I'm basically like the dumb kid, right? And so it's essentially, when you have a blank slate, you can do by osmosis. That's why the people who have already have been like influenced with a framework, then it conflict with the learning. When they conflict with the learning, that is when it's hard to do osmosis. So you have to learn by figuring out what it is that you need to know as far as the differences. So that's for me, my theory is that there's multiple ways you can learn, right? Learn as a blank slate, meaning osmosis, meaning you see somebody do something, you associate some kind of actions or reference to it, and then eventually you just pick them up. There's no conflict inside of you, inside of your brain, inside of your mind. And so when you learn it that way, you learn the quickest. So whatever people learn, you know, in like if you right now you have no idea about gender trouble, right? You can follow Judith Butler, and you can probably pick up all the stuff that, and even all the philosophy, right? That she would have, you know, you basically absorb it like completely, because you have no point of reference to say no to her, to say that, you know, what you say is wrong, Judith, right? You don't know. So that's the easiest way, because you don't know anything. But if you are a philosopher already, and you already have another mindset, right? For you to go and absorb her environment and her kind of philosophies and teachings and principles, it's gonna conflict. It's gonna be hard, right? That's why a lot of people, like a lot of like immigrants, right? Some immigrants are really, really struggling to adapt to the American way of life, just because they already had one. The people who didn't, right? It's not about the age, right? It's not about the age at all, right? It's about, are you willing to unlearn to relearn, right? And so to unlearn is actually very difficult. And so a lot of people who are very successful over in another country, they came over here, they have the most struggle just because for them it's so difficult. And in order to get past that ability to learn, you have to learn from both culture even more to see, okay, what are common and what are the differences that I can maybe reconcile myself to accept and not accept, because your mind automatically going to go head to head with one another in terms of, this philosophy versus the other philosophy. And so if you have no philosophy, you don't question, because there's no preferred reference for you to say, hell, I disagree. Right. And so that to me is everybody learns from that. At some point in their life, they will learn by osmosis.
Right.
Until
I think that's
until they have got, for example, like for me, is let's say I learn programming on one language, like let's say I want to learn C# versus Java or whatever, right? So I've learned this language, right? Once I've learned it, right, I just absorb everything. It's so easy. But then when they ask me to learn something different, it's then because I had a language, another programming language. For me to learn the other language is hard. It's because I will contradict myself, say, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't have this, that, but I can't just accept it as is.
Right.
But that means that, for anything that we learn that is new, right, it will be for the most part by osmosis.
Right.
And I'm not saying
unlearning. I think you make a really good point of just coming in with a beginner's mind, just
yes, like, exactly.
Like completely like I actually, it's funny you say clean slate, or blank slate. I always, I mean, I have it written down in my journal, like clean slate every day, like every day is a new day to go try something new. Whatever happened yesterday doesn't matter. Whatever's going to happen tomorrow. Like it reminds me to I don't want to say beginner's mind. I think beginner's mind that concept gets thrown around a little too much, of like, oh yeah, I have a beginner's mind. Like, I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like it's become kind of a cliche thing to say, but like for me, thinking of like literally wiping a slate clean every single day, I say it in my tennis matches to myself. After each point, I'm like, clean slate. Like, don't, even if you won the point, you lost the point, doesn't matter. Like, just clean slate, next point. Like, like just focus on this one right now. Like, like focus on what you needed to learn, what you need to understand, what are all the inputs that are coming into you, and like, how are the dynamics changing? Maybe the sun's changed, maybe the wind's changed. Like, it's not the same point anymore. So like, I think that's a really amazing point, and something that I would love to bring to this conversation with my friend Brian around gender identity, of like coming in going, look, I don't have a skin in the game, I guess, if you will. It's funny, because you go back to Nassim Taleb, like, right, like I don't have skin in the game on this one. Like I don't feel confident one way or the other. I mean, one of my reflections that I wrote in the future about Taleb was on Anti-Fragile was soul in the game. Like that's the people you want to learn from, is the people that have their whole soul in the game. That like everything that they care about and all their being goes toward, like for us, values, balance, like living a life of purpose, meaningful work, meaningful relationships. Like I know for a fact, like I know more about this stuff but we don't know anything. But at the same time, but we do know, like we are passionate about these things, and this is, I guarantee you, we will have a more intelligent conversation and more guidance to learn from, if somebody wanted to learn, with a beginner's mind around what we're trying to do and what we're trying to build, because our soul is in the game, right? Like, to be fair, Judith Butler, I think her soul's in the game, like, so like, I mean, I could probably learn from her. Nassim Taleb, his soul's in the game, I'm a blank slate in this argument, and I think that's a great reminder of like,
right.
It's freaking humbling knowing, shit, like, like, and it's,
I mean, and that's the fun part. Just like, you think about, hey, you're you're in your mid-40s, right? And you say, hey, I'm let's say you are, okay, you are, but I am not. Okay, let's say you are, or let's say I am, or which I am. You're in your mid-40s, and it's like you are excited because you learn a new word, right? Right. My kids teach me how to say something in Japanese, right? I'm excited because I'm learning this word, right? This new word. Yeah. Think about, for me, it's when I was 10 years old, I was learning the word for the first time. I was excited, right? So
Yeah.
to me, it's not about the age, it's about how you are so thrilled to find and discover something new, right? And that's, to me, that's the spice of life. It's you if you felt dumber when you read this book, it's because you learned something that you had never came across, and
Right. It
it
was
it
awesome.
it activates your mind to the point where it's, this is pretty important. Let me find out what it is, right?
Right.
And so learning, I think, is part, and like I said, learning for your own interest is the correct way to learn versus just learn for the sake of learning because someone tells you. That's a big difference, and we talk about this in previous episodes. But having the ability to discover something, that is what make life fulfilling, what make it more enjoyable in terms of how you spend your time
Yeah.
doing something. And
Yeah. If
like
you
I
know
said,
everything, life's boring.
it's,
You're right.
to
Yeah.
me, it's less a struggle when you are learning from osmosis. You just pick up the patterns,
Right.
and then like because once you are learning by osmosis, it's so easy and it's so smooth in terms of how much you acquire. And then
Right.
when you start to like get to the second phase, which is start to trying to figure it out and understand and trying to reason yourself out of it, that becomes hard, right? Until you surpass the level 2 to level 3, when you can reason and discuss and then debate with other people. Then that's why that learning comes back. It's almost remind me of like a trilogy, right? The first one is
Mhm.
always really, really, really exciting. And the second one was like, I don't know. And the
Yeah.
third one, oh yeah, okay, I understand. The
Point.
second one is always like, I don't know. Just like, you remember when we did the core values quest, right? The first
Right.
month, second month,
Yeah.
and third month, right?
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
the first one was so exciting for the questions, and then the second month they are kind of like lost.
Right.
And then the third month when they come, and I'm like, oh, I get it.
Right. Right.
So it's exactly like that feeling to me in terms of learning anything new. The middle one's always that struggle. Just like,
Right.
but a lot of time let's say you play poker or you play tennis or whatever. The first round, it's like you did well, right? You did well,
Yeah.
right? And people say, hey, you have
Oh,
beginner's
you got
luck.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then when you have it, then suddenly you get worse.
Yeah. For sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So for me, learning is almost that same concept of the trilogy, right? Beginning, you absorb everything. The second one is you're trying to understand, but you don't understand enough, so you get confused. And then
Yeah.
you get to the third phase where you say, well, I understand now, so I can maybe debate other people and maybe have their opinions, their perspective, and my perspective, and kind of collage them together to make a bigger piece and have a bigger picture. And to
Yeah.
me, like learning anything goes through those three phases.
I think you just, that was such a good analogy, and it made me think about every time that I try to learn a new tennis skill, like it's a disaster. I mean, like I literally, like you talk about like unlearning,
Mm-hmm.
like I get so much worse, and I'm like, this fucking sucks, like, and then finally at some point in time you just keep going and going and going, and you're like, it clicks, and you're like, oh, now I'm way more versatile. Like, like, oh,
Right,
I can,
right.
when I can deploy this as needed, and like, people can't pick on a certain weapon and attack it all day long, kind of thing. And I'm like, but when you try it the first like few I mean, you literally, you're like, oh, I'm going along good. I'm trying something new, and you're like, and then you get a rebound, and you're like, oh, I'm better now. And then you try it again, you're like, and
Yep,
then you go
yep.
up. I mean, it's
I mean, I
it's
can
so
recall
frustrating.
everything that I've learned. It has to go through those three phases.
Yeah.
Back then when I was trying to learn how to type on a keyboard, right? The first one, like, it's really good, and then you start to try to do more, like, no, and you go back to the two fingers,
Right.
right? And then you go back to doing the 5 fingers, and you go, okay, now I kind of felt the keyboard, and then it gets faster and
Yep.
faster, right? So anything you learn goes through the same phase, right? And like I said, even for our core values quest, everybody goes through the same thing. The second month was always the scratching the head kind of phase for them. For anyone. I mean, I don't know about you, but all the guys I've guide through, it's always like scratching my head. I don't know what am I doing here in the second month.
No, it's no, I've experienced the same thing for sure. Like it's I mean, well, it's just there's no more enthusiasm to carry you through when you're learning something new. You know, to going back to the tennis conversation, like, you know, when you hit your first few shots, you're trying to do something new. You're like, oh my god, I can do it. You know, but then you start, like you said, beginner's luck.
Then you're trying to learn it. You're trying to learn it, and you get in the way of yourself.
Right, pretty much, yeah. Like your rider gets in the way of the elephant.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're totally right. Like, I mean, it's always like those next few iterations around it, and you start to try to deploy it. Like it's got to be willing to wade through the valley of suck. You know, of going.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I guess that is the learning trajectory. So
and
with that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, to kind of answer the question you had before is, you know, there will be learning by osmosis, and that's going to be the first type of learning. And I know that works, and that will happen to anyone in their lifetime, regardless, you know. So, but it's not always the case, right? First you learn with osmosis. The second is, you know, once you have it, then you're gonna struggle trying to figure it out, you know, what's right, what's wrong, right? And so the question we ask is, you know, do you learn by osmosis? Can you be, you know, absorb all the philosophy, like I told you, I mean, if I learn English from somebody in the beginning, I mimic the way they sound.
Right.
And I sound like that person. If I learn from a woman, then I sound like a woman. I just do, right? If I learn from James Earl Jones, then I could be a voice actor now.
Yeah.
But I didn't. So you know what I mean?
That's what I've
that's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
And for each of the language that you've learned, right, you will have a distinct voice. Your voice doesn't carry over from like one language to another.
Yeah. I love it. That's such a good reminder. I mean, I feel like
maybe I should learn from Matthew McConaughey, you know, having this midnight DJ voice, you know. Like Chris Watts was saying.
I would love to speak British, you know, either that or have an Australian accent. Like that would be it's just fun.
Right. I mean, like I said, you only have that window of opportunity in the beginning when you knew nothing about that voice or that accent, right? But you already heard it a few times, then it's no longer the window of opportunity, no longer there.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like osmosis and immersion matters, and I think that is one way to learn it, for sure. So I remember I lived in Chicago for, you know, a couple summers, and I went to school at Purdue, which is pretty close to Chicago. And I came back home to Indy, and I felt like I was talking like a Chicagoan. I could hear it in my voice. My friends could hear it. And they're like, why are you talking like that? Like, I don't know I literally didn't hear it in my own voice. And I was like, what are you talking? And then I started to kind of hear it a little bit as I was outside of that environment, and the way that the particular little words and O's and whatever and things like that.
The thing is you already had a different you already learn how to speak English when you grow up in Indy, right?
Right.
That's why you can tell the difference.
Right.
But if you never had it and you live in Chicago and people say, what are you saying? You will never know. You cannot tell the difference, because that's the first language that you hear, that you mimic. If they tell you sound weird, you can't understand why. You just can't. True. Because there's nothing for you to compare against.
Think about like a Boston or New York accent. They sound just like idiots, you know. And I'm like, how does all these people just continue to churn out this idiotic?
They cannot tell the difference, because there's nothing to compare against.
These poor little kids grew up, you know, saying "wicked awesome," you know, and you're like, what? Just stop! Like, just speak normal. But you're right. All right. I think we've
it's part of learning, and I think that's why it's really exciting. And I've noticed these patterns in learning, right? And I think, you know, that it's I guess fitting for the topic today is, you know, our one of core values to learn and to be in a place where we are totally blank slate. It's very humbling.
Yeah, blank beginner's mind, clean slate, blank slate.
But you don't get this opportunity that often. That's
No,
what I'm
you
saying.
don't. Like this is, it was rare. I mean, like we're 200 plus books into it. I think I can honestly say, if I let me just do a quick recall on my brain right now of books that I've been just like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Gender Trouble is one of them. I think A Brief History of Time was another one of them. Stephen Hawking's book. I would say at least half of The Selfish Gene, because it was so math and stat heavy. Beyond that, I mean, I feel like those are probably the three that I'm just like physics is a whole nother language, right? I mean, like that's like, I mean, you're hearing quacks or whatever the hell, and black holes, and what, like, I mean, all what, oh my god,
Quantum
anyway, my
physics.
brain, quantum, yeah. My brain is like, string theory, you're hearing all these other words that you're like, this is like another language. I mean, I would only ever be able to learn physics if I probably went and like hung out with Sheldon Cooper every single day for the next like 5 years of my life, and watched him discuss,
Right.
learned, like,
But the thing is that's the opportunity, because you haven't had any kind of influence in the science for
Right.
you to say, hey, I want to pick the best guy. Let's say Sheldon Cooper, right? You can actually learn from him because your mind is really at all with the newness of information. You can learn a lot from that guy and you become just like him.
Yeah.
But because for me, is I already had a science, right? So for me to go learn from Sheldon Cooper is not going to be as fun, just because I would disagree with some aspect, and then I wouldn't understand in other aspects, just because what happened is there is a bias that I already have, right? And that
Right.
bias may not be what he's thinking. And so that creates confusions. Because if I
That's a
tell
point.
you, I'm going to Disneyland, right? I'm going to Disneyland, and on the way, I saw a duck, right? That had a scarf on its neck, right? What do you think about?
You mean Daphne? You mean Donald?
Exactly. You think about Disney character because I anchor you
Right.
on going to Disney. And so that's the
Right.
problem, is because I'm anchored on something else, but Sheldon Cooper is talking about an actual duck, for example, right?
Right.
Then that story, I completely have a misinformation because my bias is already anchored on something else.
Right.
And so that's why it's difficult. And that's what I'm saying is the opportunity for you to have a blank slate in beginner's mind is very rare. Right?
I agree. I mean, it's not only rare, it's hard, and it's important. Like, I don't know
It's
if
not
you've
like
ever.
it's exciting because all you get is confusions.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you gonna doubt yourself, how come he's explaining this, but I don't get it. He's explaining the black hole or event horizon, right? What the hell is an event horizon?
But then you
But
have
I
to
don't
learn.
understand because the word horizon was another definition, right?
Right.
I cannot get away from the fact that I knew something previously, and that gets in the way of me learning the next thing. Just like when you're
100%.
talking about playing tennis, right? In the
Right.
beginning, you have nothing to get in your way, and then you just hit it and you have beginner's luck, quote unquote. Right. And then you start to learn, okay, this is how the mechanics work. Then you get in the way of yourself. That's what I meant, right? Yeah. Because the thing is, when you say black hole, right? When I hear the word hole, black hole, is basically I'm imagining a dirt hole, right? That dirt hole in my mind is actually in the way of me trying to understand what a black hole is.
Right.
So that's the thing is, a blank slate is always one of those, I guess, would be the fortunate event that you get from time to time, and you should embrace it.
Agreed. And we have a blank slate with Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. So embrace it. Listen to people out there, and learn and be humbled. And that's not a bad thing. Like, being humbled is not a bad thing. Being humbled is a good thing. If you look at it from the right perspective. So wrapping up today, I guess the question we can leave with everybody, similar to what we've been talking about, is when was the last time that you reminded yourself that you still don't know anything? That's important. And if you haven't, then go do it. Go try something new. Go be a beginner somewhere. you know,
Find
learn a new
something that
language.
you are really know nothing about. These
Zero.
are your opportunity to use your osmosis.
I agree. I love it. So go find those opportunities and live the values of being humble. And we will look forward to talking to you guys next time. Tell us about your story if you go ahead and do it.
Right.
Any final thoughts?
You know, find that oasis to you know, observe whatever you can. To me, that's the most exciting part of your quest, your journey.
Agreed. It's fun.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see y'all tomorrow, and have a great night.
You too. Good night.